All right, everyone. Welcome to today's event. My name is Chelsea May, and I'm one of the program directors for WICT Greater Philadelphia, and we're really looking forward to our conversation with the folks from NBC and Telemundo today. So this is Women in the News. We have a few housekeeping items that I just wanted to go over really quick. One, just a reminder that this event is being recorded. It will be shared on our YouTube channel afterwards, so everyone can replay it if they like. Two, for the best screen display for the panel, if you click the layout button in the top right corner of your screen, it says layout. We recommend that you set it to the stack option. This will allow you to see the person who is speaking. Lastly, we'll be opening up a Q&A at the end of the event. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A at any time throughout the presentation. If you don't see that Q&A feature, you can find that at the bottom right side of your screen. There's a little 3-dot icon that says more panels, and selecting that Q&A button there will put it into your side panel. When sending your questions, just please direct them to all panelists if you have the option. And if you have any questions for one of the panelists in particular, just make sure that you let us know who your question's directed towards. If not, we'll just ask it to everyone. All right, so before we get started, we just have a few quick slides to cover. One is membership. This is just your friendly reminder that if you have not renewed for the year, you can do so now or whenever you can. We have this QR code if you want to scan it. If you're also not a member and you're interested in joining, you can scan the QR code and get more information about WICT. But just for a quick little backstory, WICT is Women in Cable Telecommunications. It's the oldest and largest organization serving women in cable and telecommunications. And the mission is to create leaders who transform the industry, focusing on advancing the positions and leadership and influence of women. Next, just wanted to touch on a few of our upcoming events. So after this event, our next one is on May 6th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's Digital Body Language presented by Erica Dewan. So a nice little thing about this event is that the first 100 registrants will receive a copy of her brand new book, which doesn't come out until mid-May, so you'll be getting an early access to it. Tickets for this event are $20, and she'll touch on how to convey digital body language in a digital and virtual world. She has some really awesome topics for yourself personally, but also for your teams that can help you with team building and building connections with the folks that you work with. Next, we have Tech It Out on June 24th. The topic for this year's Tech It Out event is Sparking Connections. So this year we are going to do a half-day format. It will run from 1 to 5 p.m. on June 24th. Early bird tickets do go on sale tomorrow, and it includes access to all of the sessions, which includes keynotes, breakout sessions, and some other panels. After the event, you'll also be invited to an interactive happy hour. They have some really cool events planned, like with illusionists and cool activities for the family. So check out the Scoop newsletter tomorrow morning. It should be going out early tomorrow, so keep an eye out in there for more details on that event. Next, I'd like to just welcome our panelists. Lucy will introduce them a bit later, but wanted to give them a warm welcome to Andrea, Samantha, Paula, and Wendy. Welcome, ladies. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's event. Lucy is a morning news anchor for NBC 10 and breaking news anchor for Telemundo 62. She is fluent in Spanish, and she's the daughter of Cuban refugees. She was born and raised in New Orleans in a home that only spoke Spanish. The skills that she learned as a child to translate between Spanish and English formed her foundation for her role as a bilingual anchor. Lucy is a 2-time Emmy Award winner. She's received several Associated Press awards for Best Anchor, 3 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards, and also received a Peabody Award. She's passionate about serving the Hispanic community and serving military families. She's the former and founding president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists and has been involved with the Naval Officers Spouses Association, as well as NBC Universal Veterans Network. So welcome, Lucy. We're excited to have all of you here today.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. the invitation to moderate this. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our panelists. I've had the pleasure of taking a moment to really get into some, deep, no stranger first conversations about not just our personal journeys in navigating our professions, but also just what each person's passion point is. And I'm really glad that you chose the people that you chose because they have some incredible stories. And they're at varying stages of careers. And I think each person is just going to give you a really individual perspective as to what it means to be a woman in the news business, taking over roles that we've seen in the depiction of the media being mostly white men in the past. And so this is something that's really, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And I just hope that you enjoy it as much as I did in the pre-interviews. So we'll start off with introducing Andrea Berry. She's our executive producer at NBC 10. And I'll let Andrea give her own introduction in a little bit. But Andrea's just been an incredible force in keeping our news very clear and clean about representing all of our audiences and being cognizant of how to report to all of the people watching, not just the ones that we're in the habit of reporting to in years prior. So that's how I know Andrea. Wendy Warren, she is our director of integrated media. Wendy Warren, I can't wait for you to hear her story as well. She started in print, she crossed over. And Wendy, is she, anything that we put out digitally, Wendy is where the buck stops, and that's where we go to for help and for any questions that we have, and just really quality control. Paula Lopez Gil in English, Paula from Spain, España, and she's a director for Telemundo 62. And so I can't wait for you to hear her journey. She graduated in 2012, I believe. Is that right, Paula? Did I get it right? Yes. So she is one of our newest members to the industry on the panel as well. And then Samantha Dunn, Sam, everyone loves Sam. She is one of our photographers on staff at NBC 10. And it's been a while. I saw Sam in person one time in the 3 years that I have been in Philadelphia, coming up on 3 years. And so to hear her backstory is just really incredible too, because out of all the fields, or about all the parts in our industry, you definitely see the most male photographers in comparison to the other jobs that are on this panel. So with that, I'm really excited to start off with you ladies. So Andrea, if we can start with you, just please share what you do in your daily role.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Lucy. It was great as always. But yeah, for everybody who doesn't know, I'm Andrea Berry. I'm an executive producer at NBC 10, which means that I'm in charge of the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 7 o'clock newscasts in the evenings for NBC 10. So this means helping to decide what types of stories we cover, how we cover them, what stories the reporters are going to go on, what stories the producers are going to put into the newscasts, and just making sure that they're written in a way that's accurate, that's clear, that's concise. In addition to that, I also am in charge of a monthly series that we produce at NBC 10. It's called Race in Philly, and it's really a chance for us to kind of tell stories and educate the greater community, because this really started after the George Floyd protests, and it really thrust the importance of diversity into the forefront. And so what we really wanted to do was figure out a way that we could educate people, because not everybody has had any sort of diversity education, not everybody has had any sort of diversity training. So what we really wanted to do was peel back the layers so that it wasn't just, all right, oh, we're colorblind, everybody's the same. We wanted to really teach people what is actually going on. So that's been a really rewarding project that I've been involved in.
Wendy, if you can please go back, describe what you do.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. And it's such a treat to be in this group of women. I'm very proud to be a part of this team. I am in charge of all of our nonlinear platforms. So anything that is digital or is in related fields. So that includes our OTT apps, which are our Roku and Apple TV apps. It includes our mobile app for your phone, which I hope everyone on this call has downloaded the NBC 10 and Telemundo 62 apps. It also includes, though, our Alexa skill. It includes our websites, of course, our social media presence. So yeah, all of those platforms. And my job is to make sure that we are working very closely with the broadcast newsroom and, you know, very much in sync on what we're covering and how. It's also to bring sort of a digital perspective to the newsroom and make sure that we're sharing what's trending, also what we could go deeper on digital, and work very, very closely with the reporters and anchors.
Okay, Paula, you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this great event. So I direct the Telemundo 62's evening newscast. For that, I code the rundown that the producers put together. And then I use this automated system called Overdrive. They basically reads these codes and stacks them together in a timeline as a list of events. So basically, I'm giving this program a set of commands. So I'm telling it like, take this camera, raise this microphone, load this graphic on this monitor, play this video, these kind of things. I run through it, make sure that everything's working fine and as it should. Then before we go on the air, I do microphone checks with the anchors and the reporters. I adjust the audio levels. I frame the camera shots for every position and every anchor. Because actually the studio cameras that we have are robotic, so there is nobody behind them. I control them from the control room as well using this program, which is really cool because it has a joystick and I can actually like pan the camera, tilt or zoom in and zoom out, and I can save these shots, and then I can make these really cool camera moves, which I love. And then, so at this point, we're gonna go on the air, which is the hardest part of my job. And I don't know if we have the picture and we can show them. At this point, I'm like looking at least like what, 50 monitors in the control room that I have to pay attention to throughout the entire newscast. Oh, there you go. So that's the control room. So yeah, all those monitors you look at right now, I have to pay attention to those. And I'll have the master control playlist. I have all my studio cameras, all the remote signals with the reporters and the chopper. I have the video servers. I have graphic engines. I have weather and traffic graphics. I have clip players. I have my programming preview monitors. And of course, the teleprompter monitor as well that I have to follow all the time. So yeah, it's a job that I have to be paying attention to kind of everything at the same time and making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be and everything is working before I take it to the air. I also have this foot pedal that I use to talk to the anchors on their ear throughout the newscast, and I give them direction. I count down out of the breaks or the packages. I also have a panel where I can talk to each of them individually. So for example, if one anchor is reading a VO and I want to talk to a different one and let them know that they need to stand and go to this monitor or go back to the desk, things like that, I'll use this panel for that to talk to each of them individually or talk to the meteorologists like, hey, weather's coming next, be ready, stand by. I also talk to the reporters and give them cues when they're going live, all these kind of things. I don't know if I summarized everything correctly. It's a lot.
You did great.
Okay.
Absolutely, Paula. No, that was wonderful. It's amazing how much you guys juggle. It's truly incredible to see the magic of television, and she is the Oz, the great Oz behind the camera. Sam, if you could tell us about exactly what you do, and having an incredible story as well, Sam.
I am a photojournalist, so essentially whatever I'm assigned to during the day, I go out and I create a visual representation of the stories of the people of Philadelphia or the surrounding counties. I work with a reporter they do most of the writing. I do most of the pretty picture stuff that you get to see. You know, we just go, it's a real team effort. And those monitors that Paula was showing you, I'm one of those teeny tiny boxes that you saw at the end of the day. That's where my work ends up at the end of the day, where the reporter and I have put together, hopefully, a comprehensive account of wherever we've been and whatever we've done. And then, you know, we set up some lights, we throw up a satellite dish or a microwave dish, and boom, you guys can see us at afternoon news. And that's, you know, pretty much it in a nutshell.
Sam, I love to hear you talk about it because you can tell, even though after all these years that we've been in the business, you're still in love with it. And I want to know what attracted you to it. We'll start with you with this question. And, you know, we had a great conversation before this, the kind of things that you've kind of learned to deal with and troubleshoot being not just a photographer, being a female photographer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When I was in college, I sort of I said, I'm going to be a news photographer in a top 10 market to one of my counselors. And they looked at me like I was out of my mind, because only the highest level people worked in local news in top 10 markets. And it was all men. And they were like, but you know, I love telling stories, and I love telling people stories who feel like they need it told, you know, on a bigger level than we can do, especially now with like social media. Like, we can all get out there and say these things, but somehow television really allows people to feel heard, especially in underserved communities, because it's massive and it's telling everyone that they know. So, you know, I mean, that's what keeps me going, and that's what, you know, I think brings me the greatest joy, is that getting to meet the amazing people who are around all the time and spending a few hours with them, you know.
Tell us about your day. We'll keep this question with you because you have pretty incredible stories. As a female, a lot of times, and for any photographer, safety is a recurring conversation. What does that mean for you?
You know, it's a number of things. It's in part the way I present myself. It's in part the way I talk to people. You know, my day, I come to work and I pretty much try to dress as plain as humanly possible, because you don't want to stand out. You also don't, in an uncomfortable way, you don't want to be the woman who has shown up. So I rarely have a lot of makeup on. I'm rarely dressed in anything that I would wear in my regular life. It's, you know, jeans, a t-shirt, you know, company jacket. So you just sort of fit in, and that's how you exist in a world where it's almost all men. And you know, everybody's very nice and very sweet, but you also don't want to be the girl, which is tough. And I mean, as far as safety, I have to be honest, I feel like if you respect people, they respect you back. I'm almost never, it's rare that I'm afraid in any neighborhood of the city. You know, I mean, I was born in West Philadelphia, and, you know, I grew up around here. So I think most people are pretty nice, even in the roughest spots you might think of. And they're almost sometimes the nicest, because they do see, especially a woman, as an outlet, someone who will listen, which is really what everyone's looking for in a lot of these communities. Someone who they can make eye contact with and feel like, oh, she's actually listening. She's not blowing me off. She wants to hear it. So, you know, I don't know that safety is something that I think about all that often.
Great answer. Let's move on to Wendy real quick. Wendy, what attracted you to this business? And also, I know that you're saying, Lucy, I've been in this for 30 years in print. You want to talk about being the only female? Let's talk about being the only female.
That is true. You know, I think what got me into journalism in the first place, honestly, was that my dad was a newspaper editor and reporter. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, you know, to be able to ask people anything and to be curious and nosy and find out, you know, really interesting things. The greatest thing about working in news is no day is a typical day. Everything changes every day. And for people who are curious, it's like a smorgasbord. You know, my family laughs at me because when I walk down the street, I look in people's windows if the curtains are open. And Andrea's nodding. It's like, that's what we do. But you know, it's been something to be a woman in journalism. I won't lie. And next year it'll be 30 years in local news, which I'm very proud of. And especially at the beginning, and especially as a young woman, walking in to interview a CEO or walking into a steel plant, I covered steel in Allentown for a while, you would definitely get the looks like, who are you? Why are you here? Some people thought it was really cute that the girl reporter was coming, to interview them. And I always thought it was kind of a superpower, because then when you hit them with a tough question, they are completely not ready for you. And you get really good answers. Now, I am very delighted that that is not the case anymore. And, I think that not only has the industry changed and so many more incredible women are in it, but so many more incredible people of color, but also people are not tolerating the you're so unique, you're the girl reporter anymore. That's not okay. And I just want to give a big shout out to the younger folks, the newer reporters and people in our profession who are just not tolerating that kind of microaggression.
And Wendy, you make a great point, because we now have, as a minority, as a person of color, as a person of, bicultural, growing up in a Spanish home and then speaking English outside of it, we now have a name for those things. They're called microaggressions. Who knew?
That's right. That's right. And I will, again, I just want to underscore that something important has changed in our world. And there were things that, frankly, I had to put up with, and I don't want my sisters to have to put up with ever again. And I think that's a really big step forward for our country and our planet.
Andrea Berry, let's move on to you. You guys have something in common too, where you were both heavily influenced by good dads.
Yeah,
in this business.
Yeah, for sure. Like Wendy, my father was also in this business. He was a news director, and he also ran a television station as a general manager. So from the time I was little, I could remember wanting to come with him to the station. In fact, he actually was the news director at NBC 10 when it was owned by CBS years ago. So I can remember going in to visit, typing on a typewriter. But I always thought when there was like a breaking news situation, I remember sometimes he'd bring me into the newsroom. We were living in Dallas at the time, and there was tornadoes, and he would just bring me in because he would get called in. And I thought it was like the most exciting thing ever, because really to this day, there's nothing like a newsroom when breaking news is happening. It's really electrifying. And just like, what Wendy was saying, what Sam was saying, Lucy was saying, and Paula, every day is different. So you get to learn something new every single day. So, from the time I was a kid, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I also happened to be blessed to have a mother who's an engineer. And so she's very much a feminist who had to endure in another very male-dominated industry, and she would tell me stories. So I was kind of raised to believe that, there's nothing that I cannot do as a woman.
That's amazing. Andrea, I know that you run Race in Philly right now. You oversee that project, and there's the story of the white woman, and then there's the story of the woman of color. One person got to vote 100 years ago, the other one didn't. How do you reconcile that in the coverage that you do, where the fight isn't just female, but it's also representing our communities of color?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, there are a couple of different challenges there. And I guess it's kind of the idea of intersectional feminism, because there are some microaggressions that I might get as a woman, and then there are others that I might get for being Black, and then there are some that I might get for being a Black woman. So, like all women, I've been in meetings before where, especially early in my career, where I might say something and then nobody acknowledges it, and then all of a sudden a man says it, and it's the greatest idea ever. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't I just say that? I even remember, even growing up in school, like high school, middle school, I remember having that experience too. So I know that's not something that's unique to the workplace. And then as many women, if you speak up, you could be labeled as aggressive or intimidating, and that really goes, I think, double. for being a Black woman. There are a lot of introverted Black women, in fact, people that I have mentored, and they're young producers, and they've come to me almost in tears. You can tell they feel very almost broken because they've gotten feedback in works being told that they are intimidating or aggressive, and these are sweet as pie women, and so the idea that being an introverted Black woman, people take that as, oh, you're standoffish, I can't approach you. So I really feel like part of my job as a manager and as a newsroom leader is to try to amplify other people's voices. If somebody suggests something in a meeting that is a great story idea, and it might be coming from us, but their particular life experience, to say, hey, let's circle back to what this person just said. That was actually a really great story that affects a big segment of our audience, even if it's not a big segment of the people who are in this meeting right now.
Super interesting. Super interesting. Andrea, thank you for that. I want to bring in Paula, because Paula, when we spoke earlier, you're like, I've been very lucky. I haven't had that experience yet with my male counterparts. And I'd like to think that we owe it to our predecessors and this new generation of people that just aren't going to take it. So Paula, if you can talk about how, how it is on a day-to-day basis, and if it's ever something that's made obvious to you that you are a female, or do you feel like your talent is most of the focus?
No, in my case, I think it's been talent, like always. Well, from the moment I was starting up in my career, I knew it was going to be hard for me. Not because I was a female, but also because I was a female with this heavy accent that didn't grow up here, and I didn't speak the language 100% or understood the culture 100%. So from day one, I knew I had to work harder than anybody else. And I did that. And luckily, every place I work at, they've acknowledged that, they've seen that. And at every place, I realized that hard work and determination always pay off. And I'm very thankful for that. Yeah.
Paula, I want to compare just stages of the journalism industry. Do you feel comfortable speaking up in our work day and age, our environment, and saying, this bothers me, this wasn't right? And in comparison, for example, Wendy or Sam, I know you guys have been in this industry for so long. Were there ever any hesitations? Paula, we'll start with you.
No, I've never had any problem speaking up my mind. Never had any issues. I think it's great. Like, you can't hold on to those feelings, because at the end they're gonna grow into a really negative feeling, and you don't want to work in that type of environment or having those negative feelings. So being able to express yourself, and actually once you do and you realize maybe that person didn't intend to do that or didn't mean that, or you took it that way. So yeah, it's always very important to speak up, and I've had good experiences overall. Always talk it through with anybody. Yeah.
Wendy, how would you say you handle that gray area, right? Black and white is easy. Culture is determined in the gray area. How do you handle those gray area situations?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I have to say, first of all of us know the world is changing, and the world has changed in a really positive way in some ways. So I'm so happy that this is becoming a receding issue. But the other thing is just having the confidence of your own skill is extremely important, and the confidence of your own ideas. And I think if anybody is breaking into a workplace where they feel uncomfortable speaking up right now, you can reestablish your own confidence in your ideas by doing a little research. Find an ally and ask that person, hey, I have a good idea I want to bring up. What do you think the best way to bring this up is? Find your network. There was a wonderful story that the Washington Post did during the first Obama administration, where women at the White House were having a hard time getting heard So they formed an alliance, and they used exactly the word that Andrea used, which is amplify. They agreed to amplify each other. And that is a very positive way to make sure that you have the support and the confidence of your ideas. But then the last thing I really want to say is workplace matters. And as you guys are in your jobs, you will find there are workplaces that really want to hear from anyone, and they want to hear from they want to hear from people who may not speak up all the time. And then there are places that don't. I'm very happy at, saying this truly out of my heart, that NBC and Universal and Comcast are places where they really want to hear new ideas and really want to bring that out.
Yeah. Sam, I want to go back to you. You had the double answer at first, but I definitely want to go back to you on this. COVID has just been no joke, starting with the people that have been in the field the entire time. Tell us how you had to kind of reinvent your job as far as safety goes, and just telling all the angles to this story.
It's been strangely, it feels very comfortable because when you work in news, it's so chaotic all the time. Anyway, for most of us, you start with one thing and you end up doing something else, and then you end up doing something else, and then you end up going back to the first thing. So I think we're used to it, but this has been different in that, you're worried about your safety, you're worried about the safety of other people, and you're trying to figure out how to make something great out of a Zoom, not unlike this, where sometimes we're freezing and sometimes you only have part of the words, and then you're also trying to create those images that really send that story to the next level. And you can't be near people. You can't have the same shared experience that we are used to. And I can't even sit in the same vehicle with my reporter. And that's so crucial to walk it through with, how are we going to do this? So it's like you're on speakerphone while you're driving and you're figuring out how to do this, and you pull up and you look around, and then you're in a place where no one's wearing masks, and now it's that conversation. So, it's been a challenge on so many fronts, but it's kind of been fun because, there's so many neat new things we do with really ugly video that you got to make pretty, and really like random pieces of media that we're all cobbling together to still give people the information they need in the best way that we can,
Absolutely. You've also been working the protests, Sam. How do you mitigate staying safe in situations where, for the longest time, the media was also considered an enemy?
I think that goes back to maybe I'm just an odd duck, but I don't feel afraid in those situations, and maybe I should. But I believe that people can look you in the eyes and they see whether or not you have the right intentions. And I believe I can do that with them. Like, you always know when someone's thinking they're not there because they care about that, and you move yourself out of those situations. With COVID, I think we all walked headlong into situations that, if I was not a news person thinking, how great is this story that I'm getting to be a part of, I would have never walked into those crowds, been in the middle of people, that are screaming and pulling masks down or not wearing them, because I know that it's not a good idea. That's a great story. That's something you can't walk away from. You can't not be a part of it because it matters so much to us as journalists.
I'll tell you, Sam, it's just your blood. It's in your blood. It flows. This is a moment where Bridget wanted me to show you a video, by the way. Sam was always out there. We bow down to her and all of our journalists that have been there this entire time. And you're going to see just how spoiled an anchor is when you see work from home hazard was. Go ahead, Bridget.
And Lucy Bustamante. It is 8:56 right now. Thanks for joining us from my home. Thank you for welcoming us into yours. Let's get a check of the most accurate neighborhood weather with NBC 10 First Alert traffic reporter, or meteorologist, just say, Crystal Cly. We had a last-minute visitor here, Crystal. I had to just go look to the side to see my screen. Oh, I love the last-minute visitor. Hello, and hello to everyone, likely from your homes as well.
I'm Sheila Watko, and I am the traffic anchor in the news department at NBC 10 Philadelphia WCAU. The main change that I've seen with my role is that I have been broadcasting at home, giving new meaning to studio apartment.
You're gonna have a nice, smooth ride no matter where you're going. So right now, we got our ring light. We got all of our company equipment that we have going on here to make sure the broadcast runs smoothly. And I shoot in my kitchen, but that is also my bedroom as well as my living room.
I am all alone living in this apartment, and every morning I'm able to do live hits because of the support from IT, from our media center, from the producers and writers, from our news director, from our HR director. Everyone's been so helpful through all of this, and that's been something that's been really, really nice to learn.
That first one was my little girl. She was 5 years old at the time, walking into a live cut-in on television. I told her, Carolina, you get a one and done with this. It's cute the first and only time. But she walked right in, and my kids had to learn how to live with a television studio. It was actually in my daughter's bedroom. Poor baby girl. She didn't mind sleeping with mom and dad, but I converted her bedroom into my TV studio. And so to hear my 3-year-old run around say, Mommy, is the camera hot? Is it hot? You know, my whole family now kind of knows what it is to be on live television. And so in that way, it was really cool to bring the newsroom to them. But I also want to emphasize how grateful I was that we were able to do that from our home and be safe, and how much I appreciate what you do, Sam, and that we all appreciate it. Because, you know, there's definitely, it's two different jobs and they each come with their own things. But they're both a gift to work in this business in journalism. Andrea, you first, and Wendy after Andrea, if you guys can just describe what your COVID change was. Andrea, you took over a race in Philly in the middle of COVID. There was also George Floyd, which has transformed this planet, especially this country.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, when COVID started, I think pretty much anybody in the television or business was like, okay, we'll never work from home. You know, when they were saying people would work from home, that it was just like, all right, that's not going to happen. You know, if there's a snow day or whatever, we don't get a snow day, we go to work. But yeah, initially, you know, to this day, a lot of our writers are working from home. I spent maybe about a month working from home. And that was really a completely new experience, something that I thought would never happen. You know, to this day, we have to adjust the way we are doing things to put the shows on the air, because while some of us, including myself, are back at work, others are working from home. So how do you replicate that newsroom environment where it's a noisy, you know, you want to shout to somebody, hey, did you see this? Can you handle this? XYZ. So, you know, we've tried to replicate that by having just a 24/7, you know, video conferencing meeting that everybody just has that open at all points. So if you need to yell at somebody, you can just unmute and then yell at that and yell on that, and then that gets everybody's attention. And again, yeah, also trying to make sure that our colleagues, particularly in the field, who like Sam, who are on the front lines, I want to make sure that they're also okay. You know, I want to be very cognizant if they're saying, hey, there's an issue. Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, so what can we do to get around this? You know, and also dealing with, you know, people have all sorts of challenges at home too. Trying to make sure that you are managing in a way that we're getting the work done, but we're also trying to make sure that all the employees are okay. Because I think, you know, you care, you know, you spend more time with your coworkers than your family, well, up until the pandemic. So that's also really important to try to make sure that people feel that they are okay. In terms of the racial justice movement, the unrest, all of that happened last year, you know, our news director at the time said we were going to do an hour-long special, and I thought that was going to be the only special that I ever had a chance to do like that. So I said, fine, we're going to throw everything in this. You know, I want to explain what you know, all these different terms are. I want to explain what is white privilege. I want to be able to explain what is implicit bias, what is unconscious bias, what are all of these terms that keep on getting thrown around, because a lot of people don't actually get a chance to know what they are. You know, Sam over there has done a whole bunch of pieces for us for this Race in Philly series. It actually ended up being a monthly show, and she's been really important. And Wendy too. We have a really robust digital section on our website designed to, okay, so you've watched Race in Philly. Well, here are some books you can read, some links that you can educate yourself some more, even an implicit bias test, so you can learn more about what these concepts are, because, you know, I just didn't want to talk about, you know, how people were feeling in terms of racism. The goal is to actually make sure that people are educated. So again, that's not something that I would have ever thought would be part of, you know, my job description, the opportunity to tell these kinds of stories. But I'm very grateful that it has become part of it.
It's a wonderful series, no doubt. Wendy.
Well, the one thing I want to say is, and I think that people who work in telecommunications will understand this. When we realized we were going to have to leave the newsroom, which, as Andrea says, you just don't. I mean, when anything bad happens, we go to the newsroom, not leave the newsroom. And when we realized we were going to have to do that, I developed a major knot in my stomach. And I also, you know, we had been covering the advent of the pandemic very, very closely. And here, as you guys know, in this area, we were kind of an epicenter. You know, Montgomery County shut down a lot earlier than other places did. And I'll never forget the day that it actually shut down. We were still in the newsroom. We broke the news that Montgomery County was closing gyms and salons and public places. And we got so many calls to the newsroom from people who didn't believe us. They kept saying, they can't shut down my business. I'm a private business. You can't shut me down. And I said, we're not shutting you down, but you have a health license. And they're saying anyone with a health license is shut down. And, you know, that knot that developed through that coverage and as we were leaving the newsroom stayed in my stomach for probably at least 6 months. Wow. You know, it was a scary time. And I am not Sam out on the front lines. You know, it is a scary time to worry about our colleagues, to worry about whether they're safe, to worry about our families. And I know everybody on this call has their version of that. So thankfully, we were able to work at home. A huge shout out to every single engineer, technician, IT tech, everyone who helped us. I still can't believe we did it. We ran television shows from home. Yeah. And, you know, now we are getting to a place where we can resume more normal worries about our teams. You know, are they overworked? Are they getting time off to get their vaccines? Are they, you know, healthy? But I think I do want to underscore that it was an extremely traumatic time. And again, I was doing this from the safety of an office and safety of my house, not out on the street. So you know, Sam, I'm just going to say thank you publicly for everything that you and your colleagues did.
Yeah. I want to bring it back to Chelsea, because I know that you wanted to leave enough time to take questions from the audience as well, Chelsea.
Yep. So the first question that we have is, and I'll direct this to you, you can ask whoever you want. The first question is, how do you juggle work and family life and personal time, especially during the pandemic? I'm sure when there's news, you guys have to go. So how do you balance that all?
You know, I'll
that's easy, right? That's a snap.
Go ahead and start this one again, Wendy. How do you balance it?
I don't balance it. And, you know, and let's stop setting unrealistic expectations of ourselves. I think, you know, a friend of mine who was an editor early in my career said, don't think of it as balance, think of it as life. And, you know, it's okay for us to work as moms and it's okay for our children to see us work very hard as moms. My daughter is now 22 and she's doing great. It's okay for us to say to work, hey, I need some time because my partner needs some help. You know, and I think when we call it work-life balance, we are setting up them as two different, when really we should be in the business of helping people succeed at both.
That's a great answer. One of the things that I want to be able to emphasize here is a lot of times, Wendy, as moms, the emphasis gets put on us because it is so hard. But I also know that this pandemic has been especially hard for people who are single because we have the company of our family. So, you know, it's funny, I haven't asked you guys about your personal lives in that way, but Paula, you know, you have your family in Spain and you can't travel and you're working and you're holding a television station on your shoulders every day. How has it been for you?
Right. So it's funny. I'm one of the few people, I guess, that never stop going to the CTC because unless I build a control room in my living room, I just can't do my job. There is no way. Yeah. And I've always people that actually me going into work and seeing and talking to people, even though it was like maybe 2 of them every day, it has helped a lot mentally. That has helped tremendously, like, because I could see a lot of friends and people around me just getting isolated in their homes and feeling that, you know, that isolation, that need to go out and talk to somebody. And the fact that I was able to do it was great. Plus, like, all the company took to keep us all safe. I always felt safe. I started going to the control room, just having maybe just one person I would see every day, or even like just talking to the anchor on their ears, but knowing they were like so close to me, like it made a difference. It definitely did, yeah.
That's important. Sam, anything that you want to say about this? I'm sure your family was very worried about you. How did you balance it all out?
You know, I think it's funny because in a way, because I kept working like normal-ish.
Yeah.
Everyone just was like, yeah, but you're lucky because your life hasn't stopped. So everyone, I think in my sort of my gravitational pull of me saw me as the lucky one because my world wasn't shut down in a way everyone else's was. So, you know, I don't know. I think it's tough, but it's also kind of oddly nice to be able to just still see, even if people can't talk to you, you can't really see all their face. I was still out there, you know, living what seemed more normal than other people.
Andrea, is there anything that you want to say? I know, like, you were born into a news family. Anything that your family had concerns over with you?
Well, I think my experience was when I worked from home for a couple of months. I follow rules. So when they said, you know, we want you to stay at home, I was had a 1-bedroom apartment, and I was leaving my apartment once a week to go to the grocery store, which was literally across the street. And that was the extent of it. I was by myself, so I was exercising. I think that actually helped. But I do know when I did end up going back to work in the newsroom a couple months later, my first day back, like, you know, I talk a lot in general, but you could not shut me up that first day. It was like, oh my gosh, a person. Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. And I really do think that being around other people is tremendously helpful to your mental health. Because what I've heard from some of my other coworkers, particularly the ones who are working from home and might have kids at home, you don't realize until it's gone how much of your social life actually depends on talking to your coworkers. And it's also just kind of the nature of a newsroom. We don't sit in individual offices. It's very much open concept. So you're talking to people all day long. So to be able to see somebody in person, it was a fantastic thing to come back to.
Next question, Chelsea.
All right, we have so many great ones coming in. I can't decide, but I think the next one will be the best piece of advice you've ever received.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Wendy, I'll start with you.
Ooh, that is such a good one. All right, I'll give you one that use today. And this came, I worked for a long time at the Philadelphia newspapers. I was an editor at the Daily News back when it was a standalone paper. And a very intelligent and funny columnist there once said, never give an editor what the editor says they want. And what that person meant was, your employer expects you to bring critical thinking to your assignments. And if you're simply following exactly what you thought the assignment was, then you're not bringing any value to the proposition. You're just moving widgets. So
Right.
instead, what does the editor or the boss really want? Not what they said, but what's really the goal of the assignment, and how can you bring your critical thinking and value to the assignment?
That's great. That's great. Paula?
It's a great one, but it's a really funny one that I can remember from when I was starting off at News 12. The director that was training me told me, never trust the producers.
Critical thinking, right? You got to bring your.
Like, don't let your guard down. I always triple check the rundowns and triple check that everything, is in, and no errors and things like that, because, mistakes happen. So, but yeah, it was a great advice.
Great. Chelsea, you want to move on to the next question so we try to get as many in?
Yeah, sure. So what advice do you have for aspiring female journalists who want to enter into traditionally male roles?
Sam.
I knew you were going to give me that.
And listen, answer for reporters too, because we become one when we're out in the field.
We
It's
are
a
the
good team.
same. I just carry the
Yeah.
heavy stuff. I think you have to love it. If you don't love it, if you think this is leading you somewhere that is the network desk up, that's a possibility, but you have to love it, because there are some gritty years, right? Like, there are some dark years, some gritty years and it's worth it. I will tell you that it's 100% worth it. You meet the most amazing people in the most amazing places that you didn't think you would. And it's a beautiful way to have a career if that's what you want to do, because it's just the coolest job you could ever have.
It truly is. I'll tell you this, and I want to pivot over to Andrea after I say this, but one of my top mentors, a female that she allowed me to share the part of the story, but she also supported Hoda when she first started off at Dateline years ago. That was the first boss I had who told me, of course you're ready to anchor. I did not feel ready. It was like, what do you mean? And one of the things that Andrea told me in our pre-interview is, don't ever wait for that feeling. And it doesn't matter if you're going to be on air. I mean, news is intimidating. And, women have been trained in our bubbles of family structure to be polite about our thoughts. And I was very lucky to have a very feminist dad to say, don't ever work for somebody that just wants to shut you up. And this coming from a man who was in Castro's prison for 2 years, by the way. So I take him very seriously. You don't ever give up your voice for anything, and don't trust the people that are trying to shut you up. So Andrea, if you can talk about what it felt like to be stepping into shoes that didn't fit.
Yeah, I think Lucy's alluding to an experience that I had when I was right out of college. I was, so my career started, I had an internship at the NBC station in Washington, D.C. It was the #1 station there. And when I graduated from school, they gave me a job as a writer. And this is not an entry-level position. This is a position where people usually work for years and years to try to make it to a station like that. And I had an executive producer or manager who was a woman, and they knew I wanted to produce, because I always was trying to shadow the producers, because that's something I aspire to do. And she said, hey, we want to train you to produce. And she said, make a sample rundown. Well, I was terrified. I was 22. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why would you even trust me with this, coming up with being in charge of an entire newscast? I don't know what I'm doing. So I didn't do it. I didn't do the assignment that she asked me to. And I remember when she reminded me about it, she said, listen, you know, this opportunity is not going to be here forever. And that was her way of warning me. And then she left for another position.
Wow.
So then I had to wait for an entire year after that until somebody new came in and they recognized me and they gave me that opportunity again. And so kind of what I realized from that experience was, if somebody else is willing to have that sort of confidence in me, why can't I have that confidence in myself? Because there's no way that your job is going to give you an opportunity that they don't think that you can succeed in, because it would just make them look bad. So I think, you know, I think as women, a lot of times we're socialized. I know I'm like this. Before you move to the next role, I want to know, all right, I can already do that. I'm not ready for this next step until I feel like I've learned everything in my previous role and I can hit the ground running day one. And I feel like a lot of times men are not socialized that way. They're socialized more as risk takers. And so they'll say, all right, well, I don't have this skill set right now, but I will learn it on the job. So I think we kind of have to learn to take risks and realize that perfectionism is actually the enemy. Because it can kind of stop you from growing. It can kind of lead to fear. But yeah, you know, if you're not going to be your biggest cheerleader, if you're not going to speak up for yourself, then who's going to do it?
Awesome. I know it's 1:59, about to be 2 o'clock. Chelsea, I want to stay on time for you guys and for everybody else because the news doesn't stop. But thank you. Thank you all for sharing your stories. And it's just been so nice to have this intimate hour with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining our event today. And a special thanks again to all the panelists, Andrea, Samantha, Paola, and Wendy, and also to our moderator, Lucy. We really appreciate your time for being with us. It was really great conversation. Again, this was recorded. We'll be sharing this to our YouTube channel in the coming week. So if you want to share this with any of your friends or colleagues, please do. Again, we want to thank you to all of our 2021 sponsors. The events that we put on are not possible without you. And to stay up to date on events, scholarships, and all things WICT Philly, follow us on social media. You can see all the different platforms here, or check out our website at wictphiladelphia.org. And we hope to see you at one of our next events. Have a great day. Bye.